Okay, I'm back making the video here about the problem I had with the sizing die for the 308 Winchester, which is for the Mauser M18 rifle that I have. This is a Lee Ultimate die set, I think it's called, off the top of my head. Now it comes with a shell holder and full length sizing, their seating die, and it also comes with a factory crimp die, and it comes with their collet die as well, their neck sizing die. And the problem that I've had is essentially, and I never noticed this because it's just a lucky circumstance, the once fired brass that I got off of my cousin must have been already slightly shorter in case head to shoulder than what the chamber of the Mauser is. If it had been longer, I would have noticed this immediately, because what happens is the die body is too long so that even when the die is adjusted in the press such that it will actually contact the shell holder, the case has not entered the die far enough for the shoulder of the case to actually contact its opposite, like its reverse, inside the sizing die. So essentially what's happening is you are achieving no shoulder bump whatsoever, no matter how far this die is screwed in to touch the shell holder. There are three ways of solving this. One would be to simply buy another set of dies, which no one wants to do because that would be a waste of money. The other solution to this problem is to have a machinist, or if you have your own lathe, chuck this die up in a lathe and remove a very small amount of material from the bottom of this die body. That means that the case can then enter the die further and then contact the shoulder and achieve shoulder bump. Now, most dies, like factory dies, if you adjust them to how it's listed in the die instructions, you're achieving, say, anywhere from 5,000 to 7,000 shoulder bump, something in that range. We ideally want to achieve 2. That allows for extremely easy feeding. Now, the last time that I was out shooting the 308, the Mauser, I noticed that some rounds were very hard, well, not very hard to chamber, but they were stiff to close the bolt on, I'll put it that way. And I wondered what was going on, because at that point I'd assumed that these were all sizing with 5,000 to 7,000 shoulder bump, because I had adjusted the dies as in the instructions to achieve basically what they would call full length sizing, so maximum shoulder bump that you'd think you'd get out of the die, essentially. Because it was once fired brass from another gun, sort of that was a bit weird, I thought, with the bolt being hard to close on some of the cases. And then I came back, and because this was what I assumed was then on my second firing of the brass, I wanted to set the die to achieve 2,000 shoulder bump. Well, very quickly I found that not possible. Taking measurements with case shoulder bump gauges, and that gets us on to the third solution, or the easiest solution, because I don't have access to a machine shop to turn material off the bottom of this full length sizing die. I didn't want to buy another set of dies. So the other solution is to grind down this top surface of the shell holder. This allows the case to then because you've removed material around the case, it allows the die to come down further over the case, which allows the case to enter further into the die and contact the shoulder and thus achieve shoulder bump. This takes a bit of guesswork. To grind it down, I basically just use a sharpening stone. I don't have anything else to do that with. I don't have access to machinery to do it. It's a very slow going process. All this stuff, dies, shell holders, are made out of tool steel, so very hard steel. It takes a lot of going. Like, to get that 5/1000, took me about an hour of trial and error. Basically, grind on the sharpening stone, come back in, clean it off, lube a case, size it, check it, like using the same case every time, because you only want to take the one. You don't want to be measuring the basically the case, not headspace, but the shoulder distance datum to the shoulder on every single case. So just use one case, come back in, keep checking it, and eventually I got 5/1000. So that now leaves me in the position of, I developed loads to that brass how it was, and I'm guessing it won't actually affect it that much, because 5/1000 here isn't changing the case volume enough to really take me out of the node, because that'd have to be, to get me out of the node, it'd probably have to be about 0.3 of a grain of internal volume change to the brass. But that's now what I have to test next, is how much that extra 5/1000 bump, what I thought I was getting to begin with and wasn't, has affected the load that I've worked up. So that's where I am with the 308 loads at the moment. And if it hasn't affected the loads that I've worked up and the charge weights that I've basically already figured out, then I'm going to load up what I then have sized left, because I've sized all the remaining brass now, so that's all sized to that 5/1000 bump that it should have been, apart from what I had already loaded, which was roughly 100 rounds of already loaded, and then I can't remember what it was, 70 or 90 or something like that of stuff that's just sized and sitting there waiting to go. So now that that's fixed, we can get back to doing stuff with the 308. Haven't been shooting much, basically due to very bad weather. Swear to God, every day off, it's raining or about to rain, and just miserable weather here where I am. Every day I'm working, it's usually sunny, and then as I come to a day off, it just, turns into a shit show. Anyway, I'll leave that where it is. I said in my other channel update video, I've had this problem before in the past. Just as a quick side note, these are Lee dies. The other time that I've had this exact same issue was with RCBS dies for a 270 Winchester Short Magnum, and I did the exact same thing. Just remove enough material from the top of the shell holder to allow the case to enter the die further and make contact with the shoulder of the brass, and that'll give you the shoulder bump. This was with once fired brass with the 308. With the 270 short mag, it was all with once fired brass out of my gun. So same brass, same gun, and you'd get to the point where you just could not close the bolt down on cases because they were growing too much. And yeah, that's why I don't neck size, I full length size, because even if you're neck sizing with a Colt die, you'll get to the point where you can't chamber your own brass in your own rifle, and then you'll have to either get a body die and bump the shoulder, or you'll have to run them through a full length sizing die and do the same thing. But yeah, that's where this is at the moment. So I'll try and get out maybe this coming Wednesday. This is now very early Friday morning. I'll try and get out this coming Wednesday if I can to the range, or maybe that next Sunday to the range and test those loads. if they're within spec of what the other ones were shooting. So roughly, I think they were, off the top of my head, without having notes to look at, I think they were shooting roughly 3/4 of an inch, 0.8 of an inch, something like that. If they shoot fine, same point of impact, I'm just going to load everything like that and take them away on this trip in May and get it done, because I only want to take 2 guns this time. I was debating whether to take the 2506 or the 308, and I thought, if I can't get this sorted beforehand, I'll just take the 2506 and the 223. If I can get this sorted beforehand, I'll take the 308 and the 223. 223 will be mainly for spotlighting. 308 will be for walking around looking for pigs, and if we see pigs of a night, although the 223 will handle them as well, because I'm only shooting that OSA 62 grain factory ammo out of that, so they should knock a pig over pretty good regardless. Okay, so that's a little update on this die problem, and if you ever have that problem and you find that your dies aren't doing any sizing at all, that's why. You can either remove the material from the bottom of the die body, or you can remove the material from the shell holder. So that may be a handy little hint. So I'll catch you in the next one.